keep noticing something that men almost never say out loud, but once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It comes up in quiet conversations, after work, at the gym, on long drives, in messages that start with, "This might sound weird, but..." Men hit their 40s, sometimes late 30s, sometimes early 50s, and something changes. Not because they got lazy, not because they gave up, not because they suddenly stopped caring about life, but because the chase stops working. And what they stop chasing isn't just women. It isn't just promotions. It isn't just admiration. They stop chasing validation, the approval, the applause, the constant need to be seen as impressive. They stop living like their worth is up for debate. And for the people around them, that shift is confusing, sometimes threatening, because a man who doesn't need validation is hard to control, hard to shame, hard to manipulate with guilt, hard to bait into competition. He's not trying to win anymore. He's trying to live. So in this video, I'm going to explain what happens to a man after 40, why the approval chase loses its grip, what triggers it, what it costs, what replaces it, and why that shift isn't a crisis. It's not a breakdown. For a lot of men, it's the first time they start thinking clearly. You remember that stage of life when validation wasn't optional. It was like fuel. Your 20s and 30s, especially if you were ambitious, were basically one long audition. You wanted to be respected. You wanted to be wanted. You wanted to feel like you mattered. And the world had a scoreboard for that. The scoreboard looked like this: a better job title, a nicer car, a nicer watch, a better body, a prettier girlfriend or wife, a bigger house, a more interesting life, more attention, more status, more proof. And you didn't always chase these things because you were shallow. A lot of times you chased them because you were trying to build yourself. Because the truth is, when you're younger, you don't fully know who you are yet. So you borrow identity from results. You borrow worth from reaction. If people admired you, you felt solid. If they didn't, you felt invisible. And if you're a man, society tends to reinforce this early. You're not valued for existing. You're valued for producing, for performing, for providing. So you do what works. You work harder. You train harder. You talk more confidently than you feel. You learn how to win rooms. You learn how to be the guy people nod at, the guy people listen to, the guy people compliment. And it can work. It can really work. Validation has a dopamine hit. It's like a little chemical reward that says, "Good, you're safe, you're accepted, you're on track." And for a long time, that reward system keeps you moving. But the problem is, validation doesn't just motivate you, it starts controlling you. Because once you build your identity around approval, you become dependent on it. And that dependency changes how you live. It feels like being responsible. It feels like being driven. It feels like being a good man. But look closer. You start making invisible trades. You don't buy what you actually like. You buy what signals something to other people. You don't date who you feel calm with. You date who impresses your friends. You don't speak honestly. You speak strategically. You don't choose based on what you value. You choose based on what looks like success. And if you're honest, it's exhausting. Because validation chasing creates a specific kind of mental prison. You're always monitoring yourself. You become two people. The person you are, the person you're trying to be seen as. And managing that second person is constant work. You're constantly editing your tone, your image, your choices, your reactions, your lifestyle, your story. This is why some men are successful and still miserable. Because their success is built around proving something, not enjoying something. And the moment you slow down, the anxiety shows up. Because if you're not proving your worth, who are you? That's the fear underneath validation chasing. So why does this shift happen around 40? It's not one reason. It's usually a stack of realizations that happen close together. 1. The world stops clapping the same way when you're younger. There's novelty in your progress. People cheer you on for potential. They congratulate you for getting started. They're impressed by effort. But by 40, people aren't impressed by effort anymore. They assume you should have it together. They don't praise you for being disciplined. They expect it. And some men find this unfair, but it's also clarifying, because you realize, if applause is my fuel, I'm in trouble, because the applause fades. 2. You've seen behind the curtain. By 40, you've watched enough successful people implode to know the truth. You've seen the executive with a failing marriage, the wealthy guy with no peace, the social guy who's secretly lonely, the perfect couple that can't stand each other, the loud, confident man who can't sit alone with himself. And you start understanding something. The scoreboard isn't real, or at least, it's not enough. 3. Your body starts sending different messages. Your energy is different. Recovery takes longer. Sleep matters more. Stress hits harder. Your body becomes less tolerant of living for other people. And if you ignore that, your health will punish you. At some point, your nervous system starts demanding peace. 4. You realize time is finite in a new way. When you're 25, time feels endless. At 40, time feels real. Not as a dramatic fear, but as a quiet calculation. If I keep living for approval, I could spend the rest of my life performing and never actually living. 5. You've already proven enough. Many men hit 40 having done the big things, built a career, built a home, raised kids, survived hardship, handled responsibility. And once you've done that, something changes. You stop needing to convince the world you're competent because you already know. And that's a huge shift. Validation chasing is often the behavior of a man who isn't sure yet. Once you're sure, the behavior becomes unnecessary. For a lot of men, the shift happens in a moment. Not always dramatic, sometimes quiet. It might be, you're at a dinner where you're trying to impress people you don't even like, and suddenly you feel disgusted with yourself. Or, you get a promotion you chased for years, and it feels empty. Or, you realize you've been working late for a decade, and your kids are basically grown. Or, you look at your marriage and you see how many decisions you've made out of fear. Or, you're alone in your house after a breakup or divorce, and instead of feeling destroyed, you feel relief. Not joy, not party relief, physical relief, like your body finally exhaled. And then you have a thought you wouldn't have allowed yourself before. Maybe the life I've been living isn't my life. Maybe it's a performance. That's a dangerous thought, because once you see your life as performance, you can't unsee it. When men say they stop chasing validation, it shows up in specific ways. They stop chasing the most impressive partner, the loudest social life, the biggest flex, the nicest label, the approval of their father, the approval of women they don't even respect, the approval of bosses who don't care about them, the approval of friends who vanish when they struggle. They stop trying to be high status in every room. They start asking, do I even like this? Do I even want this? Does this add peace to my life? Or does it just make me look like someone I'm not? And that leads to the first real change. They start choosing alignment over approval. Here's what a lot of people misunderstand. They think men stop chasing validation because they're depressed. No, often the opposite. Men stop chasing validation when they finally build something stronger. 1. Self-respect. Self-respect is quiet. It doesn't need witnesses. It's the ability to keep promises to yourself, to say no without guilt, to say yes without proving, to walk away without explaining. Self-respect feels like, I'm not doing that anymore. 2. Internal standards. You don't need external approval when you have internal rules. You start living by what keeps you healthy, what keeps you calm, what keeps you honest, what keeps you proud of yourself, and you stop negotiating those standards for applause. 3. Peace as a priority. This is the big one. Peace becomes the new currency. Not excitement, not attention, not novelty. Peace. You start protecting your mornings, your sleep, your money, your time, your mental space, your home. And once you've built that peace, you see how expensive it was to earn. You're not eager to trade it away. 4. Purpose without performance. Some men find purpose in their kids, building something, mentoring, faith, health, crafts, service, simplicity. And they realize purpose is quieter than they expected. It doesn't come with applause. It comes with meaning. This is where the social friction starts. Because a man who stops chasing approval is threatening, not because he's arrogant, but because he's independent. People around him react in predictable ways. You've changed. You're not as fun as you used to be. Why are you so serious? Why don't you want to date? Why don't you come out more? You think you're better than us. But often what they really mean is, your choices are forcing me to question mine. Because if you can be content without applause, what does that say about the people still chasing it? If you can be happy single, what does that say about people staying in bad relationships out of fear? If you can step off the treadmill, what does that say about those still running themselves into the ground? A man who chooses peace becomes an uncomfortable mirror, and people don't like mirrors. They like distractions. Now, I want to say something clearly. Stopping the validation chase does not mean isolating yourself, becoming bitter, rejecting intimacy, refusing growth, avoiding responsibility. Those are different things. Some men stop chasing validation and become healthier than ever. Some men stop chasing validation and start building better relationships because they choose partners for peace, not for status. But for other men, yes, the shift can become a defense mechanism. So here's a good question to ask. Am I choosing peace or am I choosing avoidance? Peace feels grounded. Avoidance feels tense. Peace feels like freedom. Avoidance feels like fear. If your peace comes with constant anger and resentment, it might not be peace. It might be armor. And armor gets heavy. So the goal isn't to become cold. The goal is to become clear. Here are the lessons that often land after 40. 1. Not everyone deserves access to you. When you were younger, you tried to be liked. After 40, you realize access is earned. 2. Attention isn't love. A lot of men confuse being wanted with being valued. You can be wanted for what you provide and still not be loved. 3. Being alone isn't the worst thing. For a man who has built stability, being alone can actually be peaceful. And that peace can be healthier than a relationship built on constant negotiation, emotional labor, and unspoken expectations. 4. The goal isn't to be admired, it's to be free. Admiration is fragile, freedom is stable, and by 40, stability becomes more attractive than excitement. So what happens when men stop chasing validation? They redefine success. Success becomes a quiet house, a healthy body, an honest life, relationships that feel easy, a calendar you control, money you spend intentionally, sleep you don't ruin with stress, friendships that don't require performing, dignity, peace. And here's the truth. That kind of success doesn't look impressive on Instagram, but it feels incredible in your nervous system. It feels like coming home to yourself. If you're a man over 40 and you feel this shift, if you're less interested in being impressive and more interested in being at peace, nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not past your prime. You're not giving up. You might just be growing up for real. You might be reaching the stage where your life stops being a performance for approval and becomes something else. A life designed around what you actually value. And that's not a crisis. That's a man finally learning. The world doesn't get to decide what you're worth. You do. If this hit home, leave a comment with one thing you stopped chasing after 40. Status, approval, relationships, whatever it is. And if you want more videos like this, subscribe, because we're going deeper into the hidden psychology behind modern relationships, peace, and self-respect.